Katie. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Wandering Through the Big Book, session number 57. Welcome to this session of Wandering Through the Big Book. This is not a meeting of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. We have no group conscience, no seventh tradition, no requirement for membership. Everyone is welcome. Our primary purpose is taking an in-depth look at the book Alcoholics Anonymous in order to deepen and strengthen our own recovery, to try to help others to do the same, and to try to become trusted servants of our fellowship. We are seeking conscious contact by trusting God, cleaning house, and helping others. We're trying to improve that conscious contact by practicing steps 10, 11, and 12 every day and applying the spiritual principles we are learning to the details of our ordinary day-to-day lives. Excuse me. We will begin this gathering with a moment of silence to reflect on why we are here. And then here are some readings adapted from the Big Book. John, number 1.
I am an alcoholic. My name is John. Number 1, I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through. And though perhaps you came to scoff, you will remain to pray. Page 0, right before page 1.
Thank you, John. And Buck, number 2.
Buck, alcoholic. No attitude of holier than thou, no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective, page 18, and be quick to see where religious people are right, page 87.
Thank you, Buck. George, number 3.
If you are seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe you have but 2 alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out of your consciousness how miserable you really are, page 25. And the other is to ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love, page 83.
Thank you, George. Amy, number 4. Where are you?
Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will for us into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. This is the proper use of the will, page 85.
Thank you, Amy. And Jennifer, number 5.
I'm Jennifer. I'm an alcoholic. Just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and do as I think God would have me do, will I be enabled to experience spiritual serenity right in the midst of the human calamity. Page 68. Head in the clouds and feet firmly planted on the ground. Page 130.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And let me just mute y'all. Okay, here we go. Once again, I'd like to apologize for a head cold, but I'm really eager to do today and to do what we're doing today. I've got all these notes written down. So let me just correct myself here a second. Sometimes my mind races and I want to say everything at once, and it doesn't go well. So okay, so this is our third session on step 11, and I know we're going to have I think we're going to have 2 more. And the first 2 sessions, we were reading the book, specifically talking about what we do when we retire at night, what we do on awakening, and what we do as we go through the day. And now we're wandering into some stuff that is in the study guide that's related to the book for sure, but it's not the book. So this is where we're trying to see where religious people are right. A lot of what we're going to be doing these next 2 sessions are Emmett Fox, and I don't know how much you know about him, and I'm pretty sure these details are right, but I could be wrong. I'm okay with being wrong. Emmett Fox was conceived in America, but born in Ireland, raised Irish Catholic. He became an electrical engineer and was having both spiritual and healing experiences as he grew up. Somewhere in his early 20s, he really started getting into what at the time they called New Thought. There was a whole group of people called the New Thought people. And he studied some people who had familiarity with the Buddhist tradition. And he eventually came to the United States, came to New York City, I think 1929, which of course was right when the Depression was going on. And he became a minister at, I think it was called the Divine, I don't know what it was called, but they didn't have a church. And he spoke at the Manhattan Opera House and something called the Hippodrome, and he would talk to literally 5,000 people on a Sunday morning. And he wrote a bunch of pamphlets, is the way it started off. And eventually he became known for a lot of things, but one of them was his writing on the book was called Sermon on the Mount. And it was a full book, and it was based on the Sermon on Matthew's version of the Sermon on the Mount. And Dr. Bob apparently would use this book in his meetings in Akron before they had the big book. It was a spiritual text that they read along with some others. So I think he published, I think 6 or 7 books were published before he died. And you've probably heard Bill Wilson. Bill and Lois used to go to his lectures in New York City. And when you read Sermon on the Mount, you will find our traditions show up, that there were things that he said about the danger of hierarchy, the danger of traditional religions forming an industry, is basically what he called it. That then all of a sudden their way of life was dependent on this institution. And you can, I just love the fact that we are unorganized and poor by nature. I mean, that we do not have an institution in the normal sense, and we've got no fixed leadership. It's not a top-down kind of thing. It's just the most remarkable thing I've ever been a part of. And I really love reading Emmet. For me, it started with this reader around the year with Emmett Fox. I picked it up at the first. We have something in Portland called the Northeast Fellowship of the Spirit that's based on the Denver, Colorado Fellowships of the Spirit, and it was just sitting on Jerry and Jill's book table, and ever since I found I get drawn to books and buy them without any idea what they're about, and just really love it. So what I'm doing today is based on the study guide, and I have sent you 2 versions, and I'm not sure whether Buck's had a chance to put the second one up on the website or not, but I altered the order of the things in the study guide, and what we're talking about today is number 2, the second section. The first section is the book. Second section is called Alter Your Life Through Prayer. So one of these books that he wrote, by the way, I didn't say that the reader was done after he died, so that he didn't decide what he was going to put on January 1st. It happens to be January 1st is the first 6 days of the year are an article called The Wonder Child, which is, I think it's all the promises of this program that if you will do the work to establish a working relationship with your soul, it can absolutely change your life. And the soul is the wonder child, and becoming aware of the soul and its agenda and its natural qualities. I believe the whole problem is the only choice I really have is, am I going to my self-reliance to solve what I think my problem is, or am I going to my spiritual nature as it exists within my soul to ask to be shown the way of patience and tolerance and kindness and love. I think my only choices are impatience, intolerance, unkindness, selfishness, and fear that I get out of my self-reliant human nature, or asking to be shown patience, tolerance, kindness, and love about everything, all the time, no exceptions, no matter what. I'm gonna try to remember what I want to say here, but I'm gonna break. breaker. So last Wednesday night, I was in a meeting of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'll be 76 this summer. And for the first time in my life, not under the influence of drugs or alcohol, for the first time in my life, I didn't need anything to be different than it was. It astounded me. It's like, usually I'm on the case about something. I need something to be, it's too hot or too cold. There are too many people or too few people. I got something else I want to do, and I want the meeting to get over so I can go do it, or my mind is obsessed with something out there in the future. I don't know what, or I'm on my own case about this or that. And I'm just sitting there in this room full of drunks. We're reading a big book. That's good, because I'm always much more comfortable in literature-based meetings. And I'm going, wow, I don't need anything to be any different than it is right here, right now. I'm telling you, I'm part of expressing this is I want it back. I mean, it didn't last long, it's my mind's always on the case about something, but it was remarkable. And it was remarkable to be as old as I am and realize, I mean, one of the things that was tough when I was going through this depression was the realization that this is not a new feeling. I felt this stuff all my life. It's deeper and more protracted than I've experienced it before, but it ain't new. Well, this feeling was new. I mean, the feeling of everything's okay. And I've heard people say it in meetings, all is well. And I've gone, yeah, right, in here, but it wasn't what so anyway, I just wanted to tell you that. Okay, so this reader, his editors did this after he died. And there was a time in my life I was so obsessed with reading him that I would sit at the table with this book and I'd read the selection and I'd look for clues. And then I had all his other 8 books laid out in front of me, and I'd go looking for where was the original. I don't know why, but I wanted to know. And one of the benefits of this was I got to know his stuff pretty well. And I also found that sometimes the original, because they're editing, so they'll take 3 pages and they'll break it down to 1 page. And I found several times that you get back to the original and it will flesh it out in a certain way. Well, so one of those books is this one, Emmett Fox, Alter Your Life. And this is one of his later ones, and frankly, it's one of the more complicated ones, and it has articles that are, I mean, one of these is called The Historical Destiny of the United States, where he says that, you know, we're not just a material revolution of taxation without representation or being dominated by England as a country. He said we were a spiritual revolution that basically was saying, God as you understand God. Nobody's going to tell you how your God is going to show up. That we were a spiritual revolution. It's just, he does this one on, I'm going to get distracted, on the 4 horsemen, of which is John and Revelation and the black horse, the red horse, the pale horse, and the white horse. And it's close to the Enneagram in terms of explaining a human nature that gets over concerned with either the physical, the mental, or the emotional element of a human life, and misses the spiritual element, which is the white horse. And it's, I don't know, he's just, for me, I can hear him. So what we're about to read through comes from this book. It's the first article in this book, and it's called Alter Your Life. And it means altering your life through prayer. So what I'm looking at here is at the bottom of the page, it's going to say step 11, 24 pages, April 2022, page 5, Alter Your Life Through Prayer by Emmett Fox. This 6-page article appears in his book, Alter Your Life, pages 1 to 6. Some paragraphs also appear in the Daily Reader. So at the end of the section, there are six sections here. There is, like this first one, the first one starts 1, there is no need to be unhappy. It comes from page 1, and it's also in the Reader on August 24th. So I'm just trying to make it easy for you to go from this thing to the actual literature. So I'm going to be reading through this and talking about it, and here we go. So there is no need to be unhappy, sad, disappointed, oppressed, or aggrieved. No need for illness, failure, or discouragement. There should only be an abounding interest and joy in life. Amy's going to like hearing that, because that's enthusiasm for life. And if you go back to the word enthusiasm, which is something I've wanted all my life, the only thing I wanted was to feel enthusiastic about my life. Instead of carrying the enormous burden of my life, which it always has been, enthusiasm, the EN is in, and the enthusiasm is God, Theos. So enthusiasm means I am living in or out of or from God. So many people's lives are full of dreary things because they suppose them to be inevitable. That's just the way it is. It's just the way I am. It's just the nature of life. As long as you accept a negative condition at its own valuation, so long will you remain in bondage to it. So, this, I believe, the whole gist of our steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is in the second line of the 3rd step prayer. Relieve me of my bondage of living under the tyranny of my own human personality that I had a hand in creating, that I can better do what you want me to do. You know, the end of step 10 says, I mean, I don't know how he knew, but the end of step 10 says, there is only one thing that is supposed to be in my mind, period. And that is, my Creator, how can I best serve thee? So relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. That's, at least to me, is the whole deal. And the question is, how do I relieve myself of this bondage of self? Do I see that my bondage of self is what's in the way of me serving my Creator? And all of the work that we do in steps 1 through 10 is to get us into a position where we can do 11, where we are praying only for knowledge of not what do I want to do with my life? What do you want me to do with my life? How can I best serve you with my life? And I know it's there. I've known it's there a long time. How often am I thinking about how can I best serve thee during the day? But I can tell you this, when I do at least just pose the question, how can I best serve thee? Things change. So at any rate, as long as you accept a negative condition at its own valuation, so long will you remain in bondage to it. Assert our birthright, your birthright, or our birthright, I'm not sure what he said. Assert your birthright to success and happiness as your natural condition. You know, how many of us are going to say, it's my natural condition is restless, irritable, and discontent, and that's why I have to drink, because I don't like feeling restless, irritable, and discontent. He's saying your natural condition is success and happiness. Accept that and you will be free. And here's the problem: bad habits of thinking and behavior obscure this for a time. So then he's gonna say this again in the next paragraph, number 2: unhappiness, frustration, poverty, loneliness. Look at this. They are not natural. They are really bad habits. And I love that, it's like you can read that 2 different words. They're really bad habits, or they're really, in reality, only bad habits. They're really bad habits that their victims have become accustomed to bear, believing that there is no way out, believing that they are innocent victims of their own thinking. That's a form of self-justification, to just accept my victimhood at face value and just say, well, it's not my fault. It's really actually what I think I realized early on, I just didn't know what to do with it, was I'm a victim, but it's not my fault. And it started with, it's my parents' fault. If they'd been better parents, I might have had a shot at a happier life. But eventually that turned into understanding, well, no, this is God's fault. It's not my fault. And it's not even my parents' fault. It's my Creator's fault, because he created my parents too. And he evidently didn't do much of a job, because they were not very good at their job. But at any rate, it's resting in victimhood and not being willing to change. Unhappiness, frustration, poverty, loneliness, really bad habits that we've become accustomed to bear, believing there's no way out. The way out, and remember, our book was almost called The Way Out. The way out is to acquire good habits. Well, remember, he does these wonderful 7 mental laws that we talked about. And the 3 of them are principles and then 4 of them are tools. The principles are what you think upon grows. You know, where you let your mind abide is going to grow in your experience. And then I'm pretty sure the second one was about feeling is more important than content. When you get to working with intelligent, you know, mind stuff, that your feeling is more important than the content. And the problem is that very often the feelings are subconscious. And what was the third one? Of course, I'm blanking. I'll think of it. But then the tools were practice. You know, you don't this is not a light switch. This is practice. The law of substitution, that's the one I wanted to focus on, because he's saying you can't get rid of a bad habit just by saying go away. What you have to do is substitute a good habit for a bad habit. And there are several people on this in this meeting today that can attest to, you know, when you do the work to establish a new habit, it can bring serious change because you're substituting a good habit in how you approach part of your day. You're substituting whatever your old habit was with a good habit. So, so anyway, the way out is to acquire good habits of mind instead of bad ones through prayer. You know, prayer becomes everything. It's how we get relieved of bondage of self, and it's how we acquire new feelings as to how we are to live our lives. In order to, you know, the next, if the second line is a very of the third step prayer is a very concise way of saying what we're up to, what our business here is. The third line is saying what our real purpose is, because it's saying take away my difficulties, that my victory over these difficulties will demonstrate, that's our job, will demonstrate your power, your love, your way of life. And we're demonstrating not only so others can learn, but so that we can learn, because we learn by demonstrating. That's the fake it till you make it idea. The way out is to acquire good habits instead of bad ones through prayer, prayers of forgiveness, prayers of substitution, and prayers of the practice of the presence of God right where the trouble seems to be. That's what he always calls his golden key. You think you're seeing trouble, and instead of resting in that or dwelling on that, you look for the presence of God right where you substitute looking for the presence of God right where you're practicing contempt prior to investigation, right where you are resting. I love the line, it's in the resentment part, to conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. You know, that's contempt prior to investigation. We rest in the conclusion that you're wrong. Do not accept anything less than health, harmony, happiness. These are your divine right as children of a loving God. Tradition 2. What's it say? You know, the only authority is a loving God as it may express itself in our group conscience. And so part of it's changing my mentality from this punishing, judgmental God that I've got to a loving God that really does want the best for me, if I can gain access to that mentality. It is only bad habits, unconscious as a rule. Now here's the challenge. Oh, that was the other principle.
Somehow you got muted, Jack.
You all hear me okay? Okay. It went a little crit. That's why the work of therapy or spiritual is to bring this subconscious stuff that we've been acquiring all our lives up into consciousness so we can let go of it. We were having a conversation before starting where somebody was talking about feeling emotional all day long. And this is just a wonderful thing, because this is all of this subconscious responses to life, all of our life, from being little kids. We all suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. It just happens in differing degrees in different ways, but it's that stuff coming out, and it has to come out. It doesn't just dissolve or disappear. It comes out, and we wind up re-feeling it, and that's a challenging thing. It is only bad habits unconscious as a rule that allow you to be satisfied with less. In our depths, we know intuitively there is a way out through relationship with our inner higher power, instead of living in relationship with self-justification, lower power, which is built on fear and selfishness. Okay, so the problem is trying to establish good habits to displace bad habits, and the way we do that is fundamentally through prayer. So, number 3, there is no limit to the result of thought, either for good or evil. This is saying what you think upon grows. You think bad stuff, it's going to grow in your life. You think good stuff, that's going to grow in your life. Man has dominion over all things when he knows the law of being and obeys it. Well, the law of being, he states it a number of different times, but it's essentially, I believe, perfect unity and harmony between the forces that we experience, the forces of the universe. That the law of being is naturally and fundamentally a unity, a harmonious unity. And it's only our opinions that can take us away from that. Man has dominion over all things when he knows the law of being and obeys it. This law gives you power to bring any condition into your life that is not harmful. Now remember, this whole deal starts with, I need to change. I do not like my life the way it is now, and I don't have the power to change. You know, the whole thing becomes, how am I going to get the power to change? The very beginning of Into Action says, we're trying to get a new attitude. We're trying to get a new relationship with our Creator, and we're trying to discover what's in the way of that. You know, it's me saying, I don't like my attitude. I want a new attitude, recognizing that I lack power to get to this new attitude, and that the only way I'm going to get to this new attitude is through a relationship with what we're called, with spiritual power that we call God. So, and how do I acquire that power? How do I acquire that relationship? Prayer. Prayer is absolutely fundamental to everything that we do. This law gives you power to bring any condition into your life that's not harmful, gives you power to overcome your own weaknesses and faults of character. This law gives you freedom, freedom of soul, body, and environment. Freedom, lack of limitation, results in serenity, which Emmett Fox says the word serenity is the deep peace of the soul. It's the natural condition of the soul. And it can be serene because It knows it is eternal. It's not temporary the way the human mind and the human body are. And it knows it's created by a loving God, and it experiences that love. So, and that's what we pray for. That's the word we use. And I think something that I feel I know is that things have changed from serenity being a goal that we pray for all the time, the serenity prayer, to understanding that it's a byproduct or an indicator of how I'm doing in my relationship with God. That if I'm sitting there in an AA meeting and nothing needs to be different, I'm rock solid in my relationship with God. It's a outcome, an indicator, not a goal and not an achievement. All right, we better get to business here. So I'm moving to page 2 of this thing, number 4. This law, the law of being, will give you independence and originality and power over past and future. Do not put off your study of this law. Take stock in your life this very day. Well, you say that's right to step 4, taking stock. That's what we're doing when we're reviewing our resentments and our fears and our sense of remorse around our selfish conduct. Sit quietly by yourself and write down 3 things that you wish more for in this life. Be as honest as you can be. The things you really wish for, not the things you think you ought to wish for. Be specific, not vague. Well, that's true in so many things. He says somewhere, vague prayers bring vague results, and specific prayers bring specific results. And the more, and you've experienced this in the fear inventory, because the more specific you can get about your fear, which is the point of a fear inventory, the more powerful the prayer for removal of fear and asking for redirection will be. So we ask God to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. Not do, but be. What we're supposed to do is let God demonstrate through us what God can do. What we're supposed to be is patient, tolerant, kind, and loving all the time about everything, no matter what. Then write down 3 things or conditions you wish to remove from your life. Be definite and specific, not vague. You now have an extremely valuable analysis of your own mentality. That's a step 4. When we write down this stuff, we've got an extremely valuable analysis of our own mentality. This is where we've gone off the mark. This is where we've acted on our self-reliance outside of the love and guidance of our higher power, our higher selves, our higher nature, whatever. Now you've got 6 points in front of you. 3 you want more of, 3 you want less of. What you want more of and what you want less of will often be on a continuum. So this is definitely true for me, and we're going to get to a prayer that I wrote around this. And it's always true, if you think what you want more of, what you want less of is going to be the opposite. So for me, one of the things that I've always wanted less of is self-doubt. I've wanted to feel certain, and unfortunately, I could create many situations where I was intellectually certain, and I wrote on that self-righteousness. I mean, I had come to a certain conclusion based on the intellect, but certainty with regard to what am I to do with my life, that was not available. I could not get to that. And it's why I love AA so much, because I am absolutely certain that my job is trying to be the best member of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous I can be. I just love every part of it. And anyway, so what I'm trying to say is the fear, the self-doubt is what I want to be rid of, and certainty is what I want. Freedom is what I want. Limitation, obstruction, feeling stuck is what I don't want. So for me anyway, these three things will very often be directly related. So work on each one separately for a few minutes with all the spiritual knowledge you can possess by praying for the removal of one and asking for redirection toward the other. Write a prayer incorporating these 6 points and pray it every day for a month. In my case, it's taken years. And you will find a really striking change has occurred in your conditions. What I experienced Wednesday night was a really striking change. I'm telling you, after 75 years of hard living, I didn't need anything to be different. And it was astounding. Didn't last, but it was astounding. Claim gently, but definitely that the great creative life force of the universe is bringing each of these three things that you want more of into your life in its own way, in its own form, in its own time. If you're marking things down, you can underline it, circles and stars, whatever works for you. This is it. You know, this is the will of God for me, but I have to understand it's going to come in its own way, in its own form, and in its own time. I don't get to control that. My impatience is not going to make it happen faster. Then claim that the same power is dissolving each of the latter three, the things you want less of, also in its own way. Do not try to dictate how these new conditions will come about. Do not be tense or vehement, be patient. So I'm just noting this thing in parentheses, that's me talking, not Emmett, that we do the reverse actually. We pray for the removal first. In all our different prayers for removal, that comes first. And I want to mention our set aside prayer, which is not technically in the book, but it is there. It comes from different phrases. With that prayer for removal is, please set aside everything I think I know so that I can have an open mind and a new experience. It's a prayer for willingness. It's a prayer for open-mindedness. It's a prayer for honesty. Okay, let's see. Number 6, the law of being is that prayer is the way to access this great power, and that your life is plastic to the purpose of your deepest self as it resides in your creator's soul. So plastic, you know, it's not a positive word for most of us in this day and age, but at the time it meant flexible, easy to form in different ways, and the flexible and pliable was an important part of that term. Okay, so I'm running out of time, and I want to go to these personal prayers that come next. So these personal prayers were a combination of Alter Your Life, the article on coming up with 3 things you want more of and 3 things you want less of, as well as the 3 parts of step 11, that what we do in the morning, what we do in the evening, what we do all through the day. And I hope this doesn't come across as self-righteous. So some personal prayers. Good morning, God. Thank you for the miracle of this new day, this modern world, this human life. Thank you for the mystery of creation. Well, that's tough for me. You know, I don't want mystery. I want to feel I know what's going on. And but I'm getting better and better about accepting the mystery, because I think that's what makes me open-minded and makes me pliable to God's purpose for my life. Thank you for the power of prayer. This was big for me. I mean, I felt this early on as a result of doing the readers. Thank you for the power of prayer to deliberately turn my mind from restless, irritable, and discontent to how can I best serve thee today. I wrote this when I didn't really understand the power of that step 10 question, the power of how can I best serve thee? Which just means I understood it intellectually, but not on any deeper level. But that's what I felt from reading the readers, and reading the readers has been an important, for me, and one of the most important pieces of advice you could offer a newcomer. And daily reflections is wonderful for this, because it starts with literature, and then it has a thought on it, and it's a bunch of different voices. And it's a wonder, even if somebody can just give it 3 minutes or 5 minutes. And the 24-hour book is wonderful because it starts with an AA thought, then it goes to these beautiful meditations, and then it goes to a prayer. And so it's easy to say, just take that prayer and change it, put it into your own words, and try to hold on, or write it down on a little piece of paper and put it in your pocket or somewhere where you might run into it and read it as you go through the day. Please guide and direct my thinking today. Please set aside all personal concerns, all self-delusion, all self-seeking, and show me this day how I can contribute to your eternal evolution of consciousness. This is big for me. You know, I want to feel that my life has been worthwhile, and I want to feel somehow I'm part of the evolution of consciousness or progress being made. You know, it's really hard with the deteriorating environment and stuff like Putin's doing, and the insanity manifesting in the world. It's really hard to feel that that's progress, but this idea of forming a relationship with God is the only way of overcoming the negative side of our human lives. It's revolutionary and could make an enormous difference. And it's what the Oxford groups were trying to do. I got to speed up here, but and I'm just going to get through this prayer and we'll stop. But the reverse of this is a selfish, self-indulgent life. And as well-meaning as I would like to convince you that I am, when I look at my pre-AA life, it was selfish and it was self-indulgent. And I can't do anything about it, and we're not to regret the past or wish to shut the door on it. I do believe that. But my life is extraordinarily different today, where a bunch of well-meaning thoughts have become much more my primary purpose. I want my primary purpose to be that I can contribute to the evolution of human consciousness. Okay, may I be your joyful servant today. Empty me, heal me, guide me, use me. Help me live this day deliberately and reverently. Well, that's because I tend to live in a panic. You know, nothing's ever happening fast enough, and there's a sense of urgency about everything. So I can't be patient. And reverently versus taking for granted. You know, I think a real negative indicator for me is when I take stuff for granted and I don't feel grateful. Okay, so here are the three things. Free from the bondage of desire and fear. I've led my life in tyranny, under the tyranny of my own mind. Tyranny. I had to do things I didn't want to do. Feel things I didn't want to feel. And what I want is freedom from tyranny of me. This is cold and hard sometimes. It's not you, it's me. I want freedom. I wanted freedom from my alcoholic parents. And then I wound up with an alcoholic mind, living under the tyranny of my parents right up to coming into AA in many ways. In awe and wonder at your infinite and eternal creativity, as opposed to taking everything for granted, practicing contempt prior to investigation. Feeling of awe and wonder with the mystery of it all is so much better than contempt prior to investigation. And certain, I talked about it all, certain of your love and peace and power as both the source, you know, that's where I get it, the source and pathway of my life. The pathway meaning this is what's going to guide me. I give my life to you to guide today. This comes from A Course in Miracles. Thy will, not mine, be done. May I love my neighbor as you love me. Please help me clarify and simplify my life, that I may live with faith, compassion, and enthusiasm to the end of my days. It's going to be a good day today. Glad to be here. Thanks a lot. So that second to last line, it's going to be a good day today. You know, I don't want to tell you how many times I've prayed this prayer, and when I'd hit that line, some little voice inside my mind would go, yeah, right. Kind of like, you wish, you know. And I really do feel, when I feel it, it's going to be a good day. And today is going to be a good day. It's just a real test. It's a litmus test for me is how I feel when I read that. So we're going to stop. I was hoping to get through the other two, but we'll do that next week and then move on into Emmett Fox on prayers. So I hope you've been able to either write them down or have them in the email. I mean, print them or have them in the email. So I'm going to gong the gong. Buck is going to stop the recording and we'll have some open discussion. And I thank you very much for being here today. And I hope to see you next week. Bye for now.